Joe Biden was back in the Badger State today. This time he was in Superior, Wisconsin, near the Minnesota border. The president making the case that his administration is staying true to its campaign promise to fix the bridge connecting Superior to Duluth. Thousands of vehicles cross the Blatnik Memorial Bridge every day, but its condition is deteriorating, which is slowing traffic. The White House says without federal funding from the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the bridge would have shut down by 2030.